This week, Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare issued a wild threat to journalists who he deemed guilty of racism for daring to report on his country's relationship with China. The ABC is trying to tell the Solomon Islands people that because the government of the Solomon Islands is opening up to partners who are not, in the opinion of the ABC, white and does not operate in a democratic system, it is wrong, unfit and corrupt, it said. The statement got worse, with Sogavare complaining about the racial stereotyping and profiling in an illogical and frankly crazy statement that read like an opinion piece straight from Chinese state media. Now, I find myself in the rare position of defending the ABC because this is a story that must be covered vigorously. It is the exact type of story we expect Four Corners to pursue. And as Australians, we should support them looking into these issues because they may impact our national security. The Solomon Islands has sovereignty, and we should respect that. But we also have freedoms. And unlike in China, and apparently the Solomon Islands now, our journalists must be able to cover any issue they want. That is freedom. And I feel very sorry for the people of the Solomon Islands that they don't have it. Well, Kel, this is such an interesting story, and I'm grateful that the ABC actually had the courage to go in there and to cover this issue, because there were some reports that came out, such as Chinese state companies were sniffing around areas that could potentially be a port. Obviously, the concern is a Chinese military base.
Yep, indeed it is. And in fact, what I'd really like you to do, this is important, I'd like you to put a mark on the calendar today, because this was the day when Jack Houghton said something nice about the ABC. It won't happen a lot in future, so if you had a little mark on the calendar, that would be a really good move, I think. And it was really nice that the
credit where credit's due.
Indeed. But also, it was really nice to have the ABC labelled as racist, which is for the most woke, proper broadcasting organisation in Australia, just a lovely charge to come from the Solomon Islands. But to look at it seriously, think about the list of 14 demands the Chinese presented to the Australian government, saying these are the 14 things you've got to do if you want the relationship between Australia and China to be better. And one of the 14 was muzzle the media. Now, this is China's voice in the Pacific saying exactly the same thing. Muzzle your media. The government can't. The Albanese government can't. No government can in Australia muzzle the media. I would hope that never happens. But when they're making exactly those requests or demands, then it's fairly clearly whose pocket they're in and who's pulling their strings and who the puppet master is and who the puppet is. So it's actually a little bit more revealing about the Solomons, but the Solomons, quite frankly, are lost to our sphere of influence, I would have thought, by this.
Yeah, I mean, Rebecca, it is interesting as well, because it's such a lazy, simplistic out to describe the allegations as racist. Instead of, dot point by dot point forensically disproving the allegations that were aired in the ABC report, they're just racist. They just don't like us because, China, they're not white.
Look, this is very, very sad. What we see here is the fragility of democracy, which has been nurtured in the South Pacific. It was nurtured through the colonial period, through independence, and yet with this pandemic, somehow, it has allowed, I think, in a way, for China to really build its influence quite dramatically, quite quickly, and impose its values. The notion that it's racist is ridiculous. What the ABC and other journalists covering this have been doing is actually talking to people in the opposition, for example, and others in the Solomon Islands who are concerned about what's going on. So this is really just the refuge of someone who is moving, if not already there, to tyranny.
Exactly. And the concerns, you're right, are coming from the people who live in the Solomon Islands. They're coming from the opposition, who are raising all these allegations of corruption and all these fears that the people have that should be investigated. I found that rather extraordinary.